Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Marketing Your Practice podcast, the podcast where I have the pleasure of simplifying the marketing and the mindset so you, the chiropractor, can increase your income, your impact, and your enjoyment in practice too. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about delegating your marketing. We're going to be talking about or answering the question of should I employ a VA? I've had this question a lot recently. I don't know why, but I've had a number of you reaching out to me over email and people inside of Community Influence are also asking about employing a virtual assistant. So if you didn't know that term, VA stands for virtual assistant. It often means this idea really kind of hit a lot of common kind of conversation right back with Tim Ferriss in his book, The 4-Hour Workweek. He talked about having a VA manage your life in the background, and he introduced us to the idea that this can be a really cost-effective way of employing somebody. So that's what we're going to be talking about. But I want to take you through a bit of a journey of outsourcing, what we should be outsourcing, what we shouldn't be outsourcing, and some things to think about with regards to that also. This is going to be very much focused in around our marketing, though. There are certainly several things in our practice we could use a VA for. But I have a lot of expertise thinking about it in around marketing because I have employed lots of VAs to do that, and I've helped lots of other chiropractors to do it also. So let's look at this. My first thoughts are this. If you're new in practice, just starting off, I remember the old saying, you pay in either two ways. You either pay with your time or you pay with your money. And when we're early in practice, we have lots of time and not a lot of money. And so in those stages there, I think there's some real method in doing this yourself, in managing your marketing yourself. So I want to talk about that first, okay? So there are a number of benefits for why you want to manage all of your marketing. And when I'm talking about marketing, I'm talking a lot about social media marketing in particular, making videos, getting the graphic designs, editing the videos, coming up with the scripts, posting them, getting them up to your website, doing all of that sort of stuff there too. Now, the first thing it does is it really allows you to learn the skills. Now, learning the skills is important because later on we're going to talk about delegation. Now, most chiropractors that I have worked with really don't understand delegation, and what they think is delegation is abdication. And that is, they say to a staff member, I want you to manage my marketing, my social media for me, go. And they don't give them any of the resources, they don't give them any of the skills, they don't give them any of the trainings for them to be successful. Nor do they even know what success looks like. They just know that they should be marketing their practice and they want somebody else to solve it. Now, this is a really lovely fantasy. I get it. I want all of that. There's many problems in my life I want other people to solve. But my experience is if I don't have an understanding at least of the process of it, a little bit of the process of it, then the chances of me getting the outcome that I want are really poor. And so abdicating your marketing, just handing it off to somebody without a basic understanding of what success looks like, metrics of success, what proper content looks like, what you want to be talking about, how often you should be posting, all those sorts of things there is really a recipe for disaster. When you're doing it yourself, obviously the costs are really low. So there's minimal costs involved, and that can be really important when you're bootstrapping a practice, when you don't have a lot and you need to be putting it towards things like staff and buying equipment, all those type of things. And so doing it yourself is a good thing, okay? The other thing is that many chiropractors really love the creative process. I know for me in the early days when I started a lot of this, I've always kind of had a thing for photography and videos and cameras. And there's something about the creative process that I enjoyed in the early days. And that kept me doing it probably longer than what I should have. But it was an enjoyable process. And I still have chiropractors now who I work with who have really thriving practices. They're doing very well, and yet they continue to manage all their video marketing. They edit their videos, they post the videos, they upload them up to their website, they do all those types of things. And I'm forever saying to them, somebody else should be doing this. And they're forever saying back to me, Angus, I really enjoy it. So if you enjoy it, then you should continue to do it, okay, regardless of how much money or how much time you have. The other thing that it does is it allows us to really keep on top of the quality, okay? So if we're doing it ourselves, if we're looking at it, if we're ticking the boxes it goes through, we make sure that the quality that comes out accurately represents our brand. The other thing that it does is that marketing is really about communication. And developing the skill set of being able to put together a short, tight, impactful, and influential message will really help you not only with the broadcast message you're putting out, but also help you internally as well. So the tighter we get at communicating on video, the better we'll be at our report of findings, the better we'll be in our new patients, and the better we'll be in our daily interactions. And so remember, marketing is basically relationship building. And so it's very much a skill set that overflows into the everyday interactions that we have in our practice. The downside of it is pretty obvious, and that is it takes time and focus away from essential tasks or tasks that maybe only you can do or that few people can do. One way to look at this is we look at, what is our hourly rate? And as a chiropractor, you can kind of work this out there too. It depends on how many patients you can see. And again, when we're thinking about hourly rate, we want to think about kind of not what I'm necessarily doing right now, but where do I want my practice to be? And I need to step into that hourly rate, because you might be only seeing one patient an hour at the moment. And let's just say that's, $80 that you're charging and your overheads are about 30%. It might mean that you end up sort of $60 from that. And you're saying my hourly rate is $60. But your goal is to be seeing 10 patients an hour. So it's, $600 an hour. You want to spend your time doing $600 an hour tasks and less time spending jobs that are potentially, $6 or $10 an hour. And again, there are many people in around the world who can do marketing, particularly the editing of the videos, the posting of the videos, the graphic design. There's not a lot of people that can be really great chiropractors. And so there does come a time in many practices where they start to transition and says, look, I understand what I'm doing now. I've got a really good hold of this, but it's time for me to start to outsource that. So when we start to outsource, there are several different pathways that we can go down, and I want to talk about those first, okay, or those now. Before jumping onto VAs, I want to talk about agencies and outsourcing into agencies. And there's two sorts of agencies that I see chiropractors working with. There are generic agencies that post content on behalf of chiropractors. They build their websites for them. They put out blogs and they put out content to the social media each and every week. The quality of the content, most of these or many of them are run by chiropractors, and the quality of the content can be quite good, but it lacks one thing. It lacks any form of personalization. Now, I mentioned this beforehand. Marketing is about relationship building. And before somebody can buy chiropractic, they need to buy you. We're looking to build trust. And unfortunately, one of the things that often misses is if I outsource all my marketing to somebody else and they're writing my blog posts, if they're writing my social media posts, those type of things, is I'm missing from it. And particularly, there's no room in there for them to be writing about me, because it's the same content that's posted to hundreds of chiropractors, around the world, literally. Now, in the early days, when social media was less mature and online marketing was less mature, this worked really great. But I've got a sneaking suspicion this is going to be less and less effective as time goes on. And already the chiropractors I'm speaking to are telling me that it's less and less effective. But there are other sorts of agencies that are more boutique in their agencies. And what they're actually doing is a social media manager that instead of, posting the same content for dozens, if not hundreds of chiropractors, they might manage, 10, 12, or even 20 practices. They have more of an intimate relationship with the practitioner. Often they interview them once a month. They talk about what's going on in their practice this month. Are there birthday parties? Are there special holidays that you have? Are there special promotional events? Do you deal with kids, athletes, those sort of things there? And so they're creating content for you. Now, these often work really great. I know there's a number of people out here that are doing this. If you are prepared to give them the content that they need, because remember, we've talked beforehand, social media marketing works well when we have, basically three types of content. We need to let the world know that we've got a plan for them and teach them and show them, inspire them, get them one step closer to the health result that they're wanting. We need to show proof of here's how it's worked for other people, and we need to build relationships. The building relationships is, I need to see you. So you need to be giving them photographs of you behind the scene, photographs of the team behind the scene, videos, those sorts of things there that can help to really build that relationship. And if you do that, that can work really, really well. Now, understandably, because these agencies are managing less people, the costs are much more. So you can expect to pay a lot more because you get a lot more attention. And that can be the downside. The other downside is that you're still going to need to be involved in this. Okay, this is not something that you can handball off and never have anything to do with them again, because we miss some of those relationship building. The other downside can be too, this is all based around the ability of this person to be able to match the voice and the philosophy and the tone of your practice. There also can be a delay in terms of if something great comes up that you want to share this afternoon. For instance, we've got a couple of spots open. If you want to share what's happening, the practice is closed, we've got a workshop coming. Sometimes there can be a delay in terms of when we want the message getting out there. And this is the time it takes because they're managing multiple clients. And so this is something that we really need to be aware of. If you can find the right person, and if you're prepared to really build a relationship with this person, then these type of boutique agencies can work really fantastically. Like it's it's an absolute winner for you. You are going to pay for it, but if you give it the time and you work well with them, it's an investment. It will certainly return. For every dollar that you get in there, you'll want to be getting $1.50 back, and that's not an unreasonable expectation if it's done right. So those two sorts of agencies, I don't recommend going for the big kind of bulk agencies where they're posting the same stuff as every other chiropractor. It lacks and misses. Certainly we can have them build our website for us, but customization is the key here. Authenticity is going to be the secret ingredient of any chiropractor that succeeds with their marketing. Unfortunately, some of those big marketing agencies like that miss it, and that's why we want to kind of head towards a more bespoke agency. So what about if you decided, in amongst all of this, Angus, I want to take control of this and I want to employ my own VA? The biggest benefit of employing a virtual assistant really just tends to be financial, okay, in the first place. The simple fact is you get a lot more for your money when you're outsourcing, and certainly to certain countries, okay? So some of the big ones, Philippines, India, Mexico, Indonesia, these are some of the largest providers of virtual assistants. And you can expect to pay anywhere between $5 and $15. Now, I want to just touch on a point through here. The virtual assistant doesn't have to be overseas. The virtual assistant can be in your town. It just means they don't come into the practice. And so you're going to see, I'm going to give you some suggestions in around this in a moment. The two. One of the chiropractors that I work with has a virtual assistant who's his next door neighbor's son. That's who does all of this for him. He happened to be out the front mowing the lawns. Somehow the conversation came up about his son's love of media and the great work that he's done. He said, I wonder if he'd be interested in doing some work for me. It turned out, so his virtual assistant was next door. This was a Canadian guy, so he was paying in Canadian dollars. There was a lot of upside. So necessarily, as you'll see when I get into this, going overseas can have its challenges as well. So some considerations if you're thinking about employing a VA, you want to think about their language. What is their first language and what is their competence? One of the things that's great about the Philippines, so I have two amazing staff that work with me from the Philippines, and prior to these two, I think I've had 3 or 4, and they've all been Filipino-based. They tend to have really great English. So Jason, who's been with me for the longest, his English is okay, but we've worked really well. He's the one that edits all of this, and I love him like his family. So when I talk about I'm going to talk about what's great about some of the Filipinos in a moment there too. The time zones can work really great. So particularly if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, the time zone for the Philippines works really great. So my staff, it's about 3 hours behind. So I start very early in the morning. My VAs usually start by mid-morning, and then I finish mid-afternoon. They finish late evening. So it allows me to get a bit of a head start, get information to them, and then check in at the end of the day. As I mentioned beforehand, pay rates are great. The training of the VA, the other thing that can be fantastic about this is that you can get somebody that's university trained. Sometimes I see on there you might have somebody that might be a nurse or have a background in something that's even a little bit kind of healthcare wise, who's looking to do something different also. This can be really great depending on, in fact, I'll get onto this moment in a moment. I talk about challenges, but these are all things that can be really great about getting an offshore or overseas VA. Now, there are some difficulties that you need to consider though, okay? And the first one is this. This is the biggest challenge, I think, for most chiropractors. There's 2 big challenges there too. And that is the amount of hours that you have for somebody. So your marketing, even if it's done at world-class level, okay? So like if I were to come in and manage your marketing for you and actually do it myself, at the most, it would take me 1 day a week. That would be what you would budget. So somewhere between 6 and 8 days. I could edit all of your videos. I could upload them. I could write all your posts. I could, have your YouTube and your Facebook and your Instagram, everything boost, planned, you name it. All of that can be done. Now, this means that you don't want to employ a VA full-time. And when you are employing a VA part-time, you often have somebody with a part-time mentality. I'm sure you've seen this in your practice with regards to even your CAs. And so often, most VAs are looking for full-time work. And so they will have a little bit of a foot in one door and a foot in the other, or they're managing multiple accounts. And so there can be difficulty in communication. They can go absent. And there is this mentality of, because they're part-time, often the results that we get from are not the best. Now, this is not necessarily the case, but I have really steered away from employing people part-time. And one of the questions that I ask them is, if you get this job, will you have another job? Okay, so that's a deal breaker for me. I don't want anybody having another job, certainly that they tell me about there anyway, okay? The other thing to really think about, too, comes back to this first point, is do you know what success looks like? So yes, you'll be employing somebody with great skills, but the chance that they have worked inside a chiropractic practice is low. The chance that they'll understand the real nitty-gritties of chiropractic marketing is also very low. They might understand generic marketing and social media marketing, but if they've been working on product marketing beforehand or in a non-service-based industry, it's not necessarily that there's a straight crossover of their skills. So if you don't know what success looks like, then that means that you're going to need to train them. And do you have the skills to train them? Okay. So a lot of chiropractors don't. Okay. So they don't have the time and nor do they have the skills. Now, one of the things, there's a culture with a lot of the Filipinos in particular. They're a beautiful culture, a lovely family culture, but they tend to be quite submissive in nature. And this means that there's often a real lack of initiative. So expecting your VA to come up with ideas until they really build trust with you, that society is really quite hierarchical. Okay, so they're really going to see you as the boss, and they're very good at doing what's told, but not necessarily great at coming up with ideas. And that's many of you when you're wanting a VA, is you're wanting somebody to come up with ideas and creative ideas. And this is even something that you'll have to build a relationship and to give them confidence. This is something that I'm still working on with Jason and Shane, to give them confidence to come up with ideas. And it's okay if they fail. It doesn't mean anything. That we need to be constantly trying new things and investigating. And that's not necessarily a part of of what's natural for that culture and for a lot of those cultures. The other things you're going to need to be doing is you're going to need to be managing someone from overseas. There's going to need to be communication methods. You're going to need to set up KPIs. And there's always another element to doing this when you're not catching up with somebody face to face. Okay, so things can let go. And even if you are paying somebody $5 an hour or $15 an hour, if they're not producing the results, it still tends to be a waste. Now, if you are prepared to do all of those things, then an offshore VA could absolutely be worth looking at. Now, one of the things that I've encouraged many chiropractors to do, and no one's done it yet, and if I was in practice and wanting to do this, so as I mentioned before, 1 day a week. Now, if you would employ a VA full-time, then probably what you could go to is 3 or 4 of your buddies and say, hey, listen, do you want to go a share in a VA? I'll do all the training and the managing of them, and you just need to pay me. So let's just say that we were going to get a VA for, let's go towards the more expensive end, and let's call it $10 an hour, okay? So 38 hours a week, that's $380. And you could go to 4 or 5 mates and say to them, let's just say there was 5 of you all together, because one person could absolutely manage 5 chiropractors' accounts. You got really clear on what the chiropractors had to give you, so you had your own mini agency. It would be reasonable for you to pay nothing and expect the other 4 to manage it, and they'd still love it because they'd still be only paying less than $100 a week for this person. They'd be having their own rock star if you trained them, and you'd have access to this person for free. So for those of you that are a little bit kind of entrepreneurial in nature, that may well be something that you do. Now, how do I go about employing my VAs? The site I use and have had great success on is a site called onlinejobs.ph. Okay, so onlinejobs.ph. It's a paid site. You can join for free, but you can't actually advertise on it until you pay. But it's a subscription model, and I think it might be somewhere between $30 and $50 a month. But the moment that you turn your ad off, you don't have to pay. So I start up again, I run my ad. Now you need to, inside of this, you can get on, they actually train you through how to write your ads and, different things that you can ask. They'll give you some guidance on pay rates. Now, I've been using this site now for probably 6 or 8 years, and it is now busier and there's more opportunity on there than ever. But it does mean this. When I employed Shane, who's working with me now, I put an ad there for a social media manager and graphic designer. And I think I had 400 responses. Now, I had 400 responses. I was able to wean a lot of those off by writing a really good proposal. And one of the things that I put in my proposal there is, in your cover letter to me, I want the first sentence to be, I love pizza, okay? So it's something irrelevant that doesn't make sense, because one of the key ingredients for somebody as a virtual assistant is that they need to be good at following instructions. And so if they didn't read through the instructions there, if they didn't follow it word for word, then the chance of me being able to work from them from one side of the world to the other is very low. So I think by putting in that first sentence, I was able to wean it down to about 50 or 60. From there, I then needed to look through it, and that's still a lot, okay? I needed to look, and again, there are probably other things that I could have put on there to kind of help wean that out. And next time, if I end up back there again, I'll make it even more difficult for them to apply, because it took a number of days for me to go through and find somebody. What I then did is I narrowed it down to 5 different people. Okay, so I had 5 who I thought were great, and I gave all 5 of them a paid project. Okay, let me be really clear. I paid them all to do this. I didn't want to take advantage of them. Plenty of people on there that are taking advantage of people. And again, I then started to see how was our relationship going back and forwards. And so I wanted them to edit a video and I wanted them to come up with 3 social media posts from that video. So use that video. Here's 3 posts. Now, I also had examples of here's how I like my videos edited. Here's the colors that I like to use. And here's some examples of posts for you to cover. And the third thing I think I did inside of that too is I asked them to do an audit on my social media account. So they were to look through my account and they were to do a full audit of it. Now, I gave them a day to do this, and I think I budgeted somewhere in around maybe $40 each for them. So I was happy to pay, invest nearly $200 or more to actually pay somebody to do some projects for me. Now, this very, very quickly had Shane come up towards the top. Shane, who's been working with me now at least for 6 months, maybe longer, might be getting close to 12 months. So this entire process here happened for me over, a couple of weeks that it took back. I was watching how quickly Shane would get back to me. We were just messaging back and forwards on email. So how quickly she would get back. Did she miss out on any of the instructions? Were there some mistakes that she made? Now, as it turned out, there were some mistakes that Shane made early on there too, but the rest of her work was great. And I actually kind of extended that process out a little bit longer because we all make mistakes from time to time. So when it comes time to employing a virtual assistant, then those steps there will be really helpful for you. Get them to actually do a project for you. Now, we do the same thing with our CAs to a certain extent, is that before we give somebody the job is that we want to have them in for a trial shift. And we do this from 2 sides of things. I want you to see, do you enjoy working here, as well as we get to see you, because someone can be fabulous in a one-on-one or small group interview, but when you get them actually onto the court where things happen and it's a busy practice and there's multiple chiropractors and lots of people coming in and out, they can crumble. So we actually want to see what works from there. So have some projects that you know. Now, along the lines of the VAs, there are other ways that you can go into this, and you can use sites like Fiverr. And up until before I used Shane, is I was a big user of Fiverr, and I had a graphic designer on there that I used. And I went about this in a very similar sort of way in terms of finding a graphic designer. I jumped on Fiverr and I put in graphic design. In fact, I wanted somebody creating some carousels for me. I came up with some of the top rated. I read their reviews through there. And then 3 of them I gave a task to do. So there was a carousel. Each podcast episode gets made into a carousel, an Instagram carousel. So I gave 3 of them the project to do. I chose the best one. And then from then on, I continued to use this person. Now, on Fiverr, for what I might be paying as a virtual assistant, somewhere between that $5 and $15, on Fiverr, I might be paying towards that higher end of that $15 per hour, but I only needed to manage them for 2 hours a week. That was it. I didn't have to find extra work for them. I didn't have to manage anything else. And so what I would do is that once a month, I'd have a whole bunch of carousels and I'd send them on to this guy. He'd do an amazing job for me, and then I would get them back. And so it was a really easy relationship. It was more a contract relationship with somebody. And I think he was based out of somewhere wonderful, maybe Argentina or somewhere like that. Did a really great job. I was happy with the work. And again, whilst I was paying a little bit more for it, I didn't have all of the other sides. So should you get a VA? The truth of the matter is, I actually think for most chiropractors, the answer is no. I don't think a VA makes sense for you. I don't think you have enough hours. I don't think that most chiropractors have the skill or the systems to be able to manage and get the most out of a VA. And what you'll find is that in many cases, you've bought yourself more trouble than what you've saved. I still think to this day, the very best solution for you to have to manage your marketing is to employ one of your CAs. And our CAs have several upsides. They understand our practice. They understand chiropractic once we teach them this. They're readily available for us. They can move very quickly. So if something's happening, they're on the ground. And so they understand the tone. And if you find somebody with the right prerequisites in order to do this, then you can get wonderful results. There are plenty of tools nowadays that mean that we don't need to be a graphic designer. You could even pay a graphic designer to set up templates for you. And then your CA could just plug in and add the new words inside of there. Editing videos is not something that requires a multimedia specialist. It's something that everybody can do with a little bit of patience. The basics to teach our CAs how to manage all of this. And again, for most of you, at the very most, you're going to have a full day's work, but probably what you'll have is closer to a half a day work for them. They're in the practice. We know them. We have a relationship with them. And our CA, in many cases, I still believe is the very best person to be doing this, rather than us trying to develop an entire new skill set to be training VAs that are on the other side of the world, that we don't have the leadership skills, we don't have the communication skills, we don't have the training skills to be able to get on top of them. Okay, so VAs, there's a lot of thoughts there for you. If you are going to go in this and you've got multiple tasks, if you think that you can get a full-time position for them, then I think it's something worth exploring. But outside of that, I still think you're better off to train your CA and get them up to skill. You'll be closer with them as well. And remember too, just a side thought with regards to this, is that inside of Community Influencer, I have an entire course there called Social Media for CAs that trains them through that. Okay, I can train your CA for you. So they come into that, they walk the way through it. If they've got questions, they reach out to me. I can guide them. I have CAs reaching out to me each and every week. I've got a wonderful chiropractor at the moment who's been working with me the last few months. Their social media is growing. She is just loving it because she's got a CA that's loving the new task that she's doing. She's got this lovely creative bent. Everything is working really well, and they've got it all in-house, and she's in control of it. So, folks, that's it for this episode. As always, thanks for all that you do. Keep saving lives. If you want to find out more how Community Influencer can help you train your CA to be your social media rockstar, then send me an email, angus@adiomedia.com, or reach out to me on one of the socials, and I can tell you a little bit more about that. Till next time, folks. See you back here next week. Bye. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come and check out my Community Influencer program. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and I'll work with you to help you apply it, implement it, and systemize it. The Community Influencer Group Coaching Program is designed to help you increase your practice income, impact, and enjoyment. Join me over at anguspyke.com/join. That's anguspyke.com/join. I'd love to see you there.